cheating, espionage, spy work, skullduggery, sleight of hand. Is it going to get crazier? Welcome to Big Dumb Football. I'm Spencer Hall, and today we are talking about my top 3 college football scandals of all time. The fun kind, not the extremely bad crime type ones.
And it Morgan on the end around. He's got speed down the sideline. Samaj Morgan, touchdown.
If you're a college football fan and you're watching this, you've probably heard about Michigan's current sign stealing scandal. Whatever you think about that, we're going to get into it at a later video, if only because new stuff keeps coming out and it keeps getting increasingly ridiculous. Here's what we do know about the Michigan scandal, and I'm going to try to say it in as concise and quick a fashion as possible. Connor Stalions, a staffer with the University of Michigan football program since 2022 and hanging around the program well before that, a United States Naval Academy graduate who served in the Marines and has a serious obsession with Michigan football, went on either his own or with the knowledge of the staff, it's not clear at this point, a mission to acquire all of the signals of every Big Ten team and anyone that Michigan might play in football ever for the rest of eternity by sending people to other games and sometimes himself to film the signals and plays of other teams. This is expressly forbidden by NCAA bylaws and generally considered bad form by every other football coach in the world. Who knew and how did they know it? We don't know at this point. It is ongoing. Did he sneak onto the sidelines at Central Michigan versus Michigan State dressed in full Central Michigan garb? Maybe. There's somebody who looks a lot like him on the sidelines. Is it going to get crazier? Yeah, and that's before I tell you he wrote a 500-page manifesto on Michigan and about what they could be. Yeah, it's an insane scandal, and it's not alone. But what I know you're wondering here, YouTube viewer, is this: where does this rank among the all-time college football scandals involving espionage, skullduggery, sleight of hand, covert work between programs to uncover football secrets between two teams bound to clash on the gridiron? Well, I am so glad you asked, because I have answers for you. At number 3, I'd like to go back to 1896 and talk about Auburn, Georgia Tech. Auburn, at the source of a number of different, extremely funny incidents, I might add, during the history of college football involving maybe trying to get an edge here or there. Shouts out to an ongoing investigation involving Cam Newton. Wow. In 1896, they got this started when Georgia Tech came to town and lost 45-0. One of the reasons they might have been so tired and not up for the game, Georgia Tech had to take the train to Auburn. That's how long ago this was. Auburn fans greased the rails at the station that Georgia Tech was arriving in. When the train braked, it went 5 miles past the station, forcing the team to walk past with all of their gear 5 miles back to town. Again, they lost 45-0. Always take an edge when you can get it. Now, we're going to have to take this Michigan scandal and put it in the pantheon of all-time college football cheating scandals. And when I say cheating, I mean things we're trying to do to affect the on-field game, getting signals, trying to gain an edge here or there. To me, there are two, and two that reign above all else in terms of espionage, in terms of fake spy hustle. They had some very serious outcomes, but they're each ridiculous in their own right. At number 2, a little something we call Faxgate. In 1991, former Tennessee assistant Jack Sells, scorned by the program after some recruiting violations on his behalf, managed to send a large chunk of the Tennessee playbook, yes, the University of Tennessee Volunteers football playbook, to a young assistant named Ron Zook at the University of Florida. This was a straight transfer, just gave him the whole playbook, and thus it was called Faxgate. Is this illegal? No. A playbook won't necessarily help you win a game. Is it outrageous? Yes. Not just because this may have been the last recorded instance of anyone ever using a fax machine, but also because it represented a get-me-back. It represented payback on the part of a former scorned assistant who did this for no other reason than a buddy asked for it, and he was mad at the school. Later, Steve Spurrier himself would joke that the two programs already did enough scouting that having the playbook really didn't give them that much of an advantage. But it's really the audacity of this, that somebody would ask for it and someone who was just mad at someone would do it out of anger, out of spite. It just means more, y'all. And at number 1, the king of absurd college football tactical scandals, WikiLeaks. The king of college football espionage. If you ask me, in terms of spectacular efforts to gain a slight edge for little to no gain for games that weren't even that important on a conference or national level, is WikiLeaks. Little play on the name WikiLeaks there. WikiLeaks, greatest scandal name in college football of all time. In 2014, a number of assistants were contacted by a man named Tommy Elrod. Tommy Elrod was a former assistant coach under Jim Grobe at Wake Forest. He was a Wake Forest lifer, a guy who'd gone there and had his kids in school there and was an assistant under Grobe. In 2014, he was no longer an assistant because Dave Clawson was the new head coach. It's pretty common for guys to turn over the whole staff and say, hey, thanks for the effort. Maybe we'll keep a couple of y'all, but otherwise go find yourselves a new job because I got my guys, I got my way of doing things, and I like to keep it that way. But Elrod was interesting. Elrod stayed. And by that, I mean he stayed at Wake Forest and became one of the guys working the radio crew, just helping as sort of a color commentator. But he also got access to practices. And according to Clawson, there was no indication of bad blood. The two got along. They were fine with each other. There was no simmering resentment as far as Clawson could tell. And yet, fast forward to a couple of years later, leaving the field after a walkthrough against Louisville, Wake Forest personnel look down and find special plays put in that week to break tendencies, little trick plays, a gadget here, a gadget there, things they didn't normally do that were going to shake up the game plan against Louisville. They find them on the ground, diagrams, maps, little indicators that not only had they scouted Wake Forest, they had access to that week's game plan. As it turns out, Elrod had been leaking this to several different staffs, Louisville, Army, Virginia Tech, sending them plays specifically designed to counter a lot of what the other teams had planned for them. A lot of things that, when found, indicated not just scouting, prior knowledge, the kind of things that we saw Michigan trying to get. No. It meant they had someone in the room during the week. Elrod had been leaking that information. For what? For nothing. For absolutely nothing. No personal gain besides the reward of seeing spite validated on the field for plays that really never even bothered to work. Didn't affect the games that much. That kind of huge risk for very little reward. That kind of foolishness, that's peak college football right there. And you say, for very little gain or cost. Well, Elrod lost his job. However, one of the assistants implicated in terms of the receipt, somebody who got it and who went that extra mile, was fined $25,000 for being involved in the scandal. A Georgia assistant named Shane Beamer, who is now the head coach at South Carolina. And an honorable mention I would like to include at the back end, Texas high school football. All of it. High school football, to me, all of the things we talk about as scandals are standard operating procedure, okay? That includes the entire state of Texas, whether that's running a steroid ring out of the local drugstore just for the benefit of Colleyville high school football, which is a thing that happened in the very small town of Colleyville, whether it's trying to knock out a ref during a game for very good reasons, by the way, if you look into the story, according to the players, and or an ineligible player sleeping at the town fire station after their family left town just to keep eligibility. They're everything that we're talking about in terms of sign stealing, in terms of trying to get the playbook, in terms of gaining every possible edge. It's basically just Texas high school football. It's a zoo. One day someone will write it all down and you won't believe it's true. I don't want to laugh too much at cheating. I think the game has to be fair. I'm not above that. I'm not a nihilist, but I will say that given what you can get in terms of the actual off-field scandals, both in sport at large and in college football, when you find something like this, when you find an absurd little caper where somebody has gone 1,000 miles to gain a nearly worthless inch of advantage over somebody, it really speaks to, I think, how seriously we take these things and how far you can go and how silly it can get. Because again, most of the time when we talk about getting signals or getting film or getting an advantage on somebody or even getting the whole playbook or specific plays designed to stop you, you still have to play the game. And a lot of times it doesn't even end up helping you because there's no way you can block that man in front of you. They're better than you are. And no amount of cheating, espionage, spy work, or adventuring through the hard drives of other coaches, it still can't help you. It's amazing to me. I love the absurdity of that we've built a game football that is so big and so burly and so chaotic that sometimes cheating doesn't even work.